Hello everybody, this is Derek with Reef Automation. This is episode 15 and the final episode of the GHL Vs Apex series. In this episode I'm going to go over the final 10 review points that I made and also a final review of both systems. So let's get started. Number one is going to be expansion. So when I talk about expansion, I'm talking about, well, what can we add to the systems and what are the features that it provides. So the GHL has a lot of things that you can add to their system. They have an expansion box which gives you a ton of additional things. What I really like about their expansion box is they have these little cards that you can pop into it and expand your device twofold. You can put up to, I believe, 4 cards into the expansion box, and you can also put 2 cards into the main unit. So it gives you flexibility to upgrade, and for that, I'm going to definitely give it 4 stars. It's very expandable. You can add a lot of things to it very easily. All you do is you connect an Ethernet cable, or what they call the PAB cable, to the expansion box. You can relocate that in another location. So very nice feature that the GHL has. So the Apex has very similar expandability. They use an Aquabus cable instead of the Ethernet cable or PAB cable. I'd prefer to use the Ethernet cable to connect everything. Makes it a lot easier to get through the attics with that type of cable. They have smaller little module boxes, and you have to have a lot of them, whereas the GHL, everything plugs into the back of the GHL, or everything plugs into the back of their expansion board. So I give Apex 4 stars, I give GHL 4 stars. I think they're equally matched in their expandability. So the next thing we're going to go over is features, and when I talk about features, I'm talking about some of the additional features that one has over the other. Okay, so when we talk about features, the GHL has very limited features in my opinion. It does have a reminder ability which shows up on the display, which is kind of nice, and of course it'll email, text you. It does have a logbook. The measurements are so-so, they're not that great, but it does have some features. Unfortunately, the Apex has significantly more features. I'm going to have to give the GHL 2 stars and the Apex 5 stars. The Apex has a logbook that's significantly better, a calendar that's better, measurement ability that's a lot better. It also has voice control. It has IOTA feature. It has just a lot of extra things that you wouldn't expect, or some of them I don't even use, like the notes feature. But it has the ability, and therefore I have to give Apex a 5. And next we're going to go over the displays. So the displays on both of them are quite different. The display on the GHL is actually built into the unit itself. I find that to be so-so. Having the display on the unit itself means that you have to locate the unit outside of the tank possibly so you can see it, where then all your wires are going to be. So if you have it inside a cabinet where most of us would mount the controller, you have to open your door every time you want to see something. So the display isn't the greatest in that regard. There's no way to remotely display it. The buttons are, in my opinion, just terrible. I had so many issues with the buttons on this display. I had to calibrate it 3 times. I didn't find it to be very useful, to be honest. And you have to use the buttons in order to calibrate, so they have to be used. The display overall looks really nice. I'm going to give it a 3 star. I think the display has a lot of information, which is nice. It gives you your reminders, your alarms, tells you exactly what the alarm is, which is nice. The Apex doesn't do that. But again, if it's located in a cabinet, it's kind of useless. Also, that being the color that also shines on the top of it is useless if it's inside a cabinet. I'm going to give the Apex a 4 star. It has a lot of the same display things that the GHL has. It actually gives you a little bit more in terms of the probe measurements. What the Apex doesn't provide is the outlet information. It gives you these little icons, which are okay. I prefer it being maybe a little bit differently displayed. The display can be remote. That's the biggest difference between the Apex and the GHL, and I'm going to find that the Apex is a lot better in that regard because you can locate your display anywhere. You can have a tank in one room and locate your display in a whole other room. You can have a fish room where you have your display. Very nice feature. I think that's a great thing on the display. The Apex buttons are tactile physical buttons, so they're a little bit easier to touch and feel. They are a little bit slow, kind of similar to the GHL, but they are much better in terms of feeling and getting to the right button you need to get to. So overall, Apex a 4 and GHL a 3 in this regard. And now we're going to move on to notifications. So notifications, as I said, are a big deal. Both of the systems provide notifications or email or text. However, one of the biggest differences is Apex has push notifications. If you're not familiar with push notifications, those are provided by the app on your phone or on an iPad or a tablet or any device that provides notifications via the app itself. The GHL has 0 push notifications. I think that's a huge bummer. I wish the GHL had them, and I have to give them 2 stars for this. They have email notifications. They have a lot of different ones that you can get. You can also program them to do whatever you want. But the fact that it does not have push notifications, I think, is a big deal. Also, furthermore, in order to get text notifications based off of power outages, you have to have something called an SMS module that they make. Unfortunately, the SMS module is no longer sold, so it really only will do email address notifications right now. Now, I know you can text an email, so you do have the ability to get text notifications that are emails, but they're not natively supported inside the unit. I'm going to give the Apex 4 stars for the notifications. They have push notifications, they have text notifications, and email notifications, and you can enable them any which way you want. The only reason I'm going to give them 4 stars is because the notifications aren't very good in specifically giving you information. I wish they had the ability to provide multiple notifications. So for instance, if your water level was to be too high or too low and your power went out at the same time, that it gives you both of those notifications. Also the ability to maybe edit what it states, where this GHL does provide you the ability to type in a specific message. So you could get a notification from the Apex and it'd be nice to say, hey, your alarm is this, and this, or have some type of coding to provide that. Not a big deal, but something that would be nice that the Apex doesn't have currently. So the next thing we're going to review is the power management. I did an entire video on power management, which also goes hand in hand with graphing, which I'm also going to go over. So in terms of power management and graphing, I did an entire video on this, and I was shocked to see that the GHL has almost nothing for power monitoring. They do have the ability to tell you if the power goes out, but that's about it. They don't have the ability to show you what your power is, what you're possibly spending per outlet. It doesn't have any way of notifying you if a power outage happened, but possibly something else happened. It just does something if your power goes out. The Apex provides a lot more information when it comes to this. So for the GHL, I'm going to only give you 1 star for power, also combined with the graphing and charts. There's almost nothing of value on the GHL charting. It does provide you with pH salt and so forth with a graph, but there's no way to know if something came on or off, when it came on or off, if it affected your pH, if it didn't affect your pH. The Apex provides a plethora of charting ability. You can compare anything to anything, and I have to give Apex 5 stars. Their power monitoring is one of the greatest features that they have. The ability to know what is going on each outlet at any given time, the ability to log when something goes on and how it affects something else, the ability to know how you can save money by removing something from another thing. It's just leaps and bounds better than the GHL in terms of power and their graphing ability. So next thing we're going to go over is their support, both the GHL and the Apex, and also their social presence. So in terms of support, I did some testing with both of the companies. I sent them both an email and sent them a ticket to see how long it would take them to get that rectified and what the problem could be. GHL took roughly 3 to 4 days to get back to me. I didn't find it to be the greatest of support. It appeared to come from Germany. I'm not 100% sure, but it wasn't the greatest level of support, unfortunately. They do have a knowledge base. It's relatively good. It has a lot of information for people that need help. I did find that aspect of their system to be quite good. Their social presence is relatively lackluster. There's a couple groups out there on Facebook, and there's a couple YouTube channels dedicated for GHL, but it's very, very little. So for that, I'm going to give GHL 3 stars. Their support was relatively good. I found that their knowledge base was packed with all kinds of information that was helpful. So I'm going to give them 3 stars. I'm going to give Apex 4 stars. Their support got back to me really quickly. They got back to me in about, I think it was 12 hours I counted, and it was a very helpful response. They also both have phone numbers. However, the GHL phone number I found was in Germany, and the Apex is here in the United States. They do have a telephone support. Apex's telephone support is very good. However, when you call them, they usually have to schedule an additional appointment. So just be aware of that. Their ticket system is a lot better. You can go online and look at your ticket system, similar to that the GHL, but it's a lot more helpful. They give you a lot more advice. In terms of social presence, the Apex is significantly better. There's a lot of Facebook groups for the Apex. There's just a ton of information online, tons of YouTube videos, of course, including mine. Lots of information for the Apex. So I'm going to give them a 4 in this regard. So the next thing we're going to go over is the warranty. So the warranty for both of the companies is a little bit different. After talking to some of the representatives from both of the companies, I found some information out that was very interesting about the warranty. So for GHL, they have a very good warranty. It's 2 years. They do have a warehouse in North Carolina that does all the repairs. However, when I spoke to them, they had mentioned that most of their warranty is actually done by the end user. So if you have a product that's having an issue, they'll send you parts to get it fixed. I guess that speeds up time, but for me, I don't want to open up the product and break it even more. So I don't know what that's about. They do offer repair where you have to send it into them and then they return it back to you. I don't know what the turnaround time is on that because I never had to send anything back to them. From what I researched and what I read online, the GHL doesn't have a lot of issues, so there's not a lot of repairs from what I'm reading. So I'm going to give them 4 stars. I think their warranty is good at 2 years, and the repair process is also very good. On the Apex side, they have a 1-year warranty on their product. I know from personal experience that I've called them after the 1 year and they've been more than helpful. So I don't know if that 1 year is set in stone. Also, they have the advanced replacement, which is huge. If there's something wrong with your unit, they'll send you a new unit and then let you send the other unit to get repaired, where the GHL doesn't have that option. Also, Apex is never going to tell you to fix their product on site. They're going to have you just send the unit back in. So for that, I'm going to give them 4 stars, both of them. I think both of their warranties are actually quite good, and both of their support options are quite good. So for that, I'm going to give them 4 stars. So the next thing I'm going to discuss is measurements and what devices that both of them sell for measuring parameters, such as an automatic tester. So measurements from the GHL come in a number of different devices. They have the standard pH probe, ORP probe, salinity probe, and temperature probe. I found that those 4 devices made by GHL were very accurate and very well made. I actually like the black color of the probes and what they say on the side of them. I like that feature. GHL does make a KH measuring device called the KH Director, and they do make, or they're going to be making, because it's not available yet, the Ion Director, which is going to test a number of things. One thing about the GHL Ion Director and the KH Director is it has to have a doser with it, which increases the price by double. So that's one thing I do not like about it. It's not built into the system. From my understanding, after doing some research, the Ion Director is not available, and we don't know when it's going to be available, so I can't really give it a review on that. But for measurements, I'm going to give GHL a 3. And the only reason I'm going to give them a 3 is because the fact is you have to buy an extra piece of equipment for the GHL. Now, the device that GHL makes is a standalone unit, which is really nice. The GHL, you can buy the KH Director, and you don't need a kitted controller. So that feature is really nice. Now, the Apex, they have very good probes. They're double junction probes. By the way, GHL does have double junction probes as well. I don't like the fact that they're different colors. Again, that's my own opinion. They work really well. I've heard many problems with salinity probes, but I can tell you from my experience, I have 3 salinity probes and they work perfectly fine. If you do some research and also look at my videos on how to do salinity probe mounting, you will find that they actually work really well. But the reason I'm going to be giving Apex 5 stars right now is their Trident. For those that don't have a Trident, I can't tell you how much of a lifesaver it is. The fact that you need an Apex controller isn't that great. I wish there was a way you can have a standalone Trident just for people that don't have a controller. But, you know, I could tell you knowing the parameters of calcium isn't that big of a deal. Knowing the parameters of magnesium isn't a big deal. But, of course, knowing your alkalinity is huge. But knowing stability is the most important thing. So knowing your calcium, magnesium is stable and your alkalinity is stable is a huge parameter to know. And the Trident exceeds my expectations twofold. You don't need an extra dosing pump. It's all built into the system and it's very accurate. The GHL KH Director is also very accurate, but again, doesn't have the ability to tell you calcium or magnesium, and you need to have extra dosers. So overall, I think GHL has great devices for measuring, but it's a little more expensive and you have to have extra parts, whereas the Apex you do not, other than of course the brain, which I mentioned earlier. So now we're going to go over internal integrations, and what I mean by that is GHL combined with GHL products, what benefits you're getting versus Apex products and what you're getting when you put their products together. Internal integrations, I looked at both of the systems and looked at all the different products they sell and what kind of cool or unique items or things you can do when you integrate their products together. So with the GHL, of course, they have the GHL KH Director, which requires the doser 2.1. When you put those two together, the KH Director will actually dose alkalinity based on your consumption that the KH Director is getting. It's also a standalone unit, which is really nice. The Ion Director, which they're going to be coming out with, the assumption is they're going to do the same thing for calcium and magnesium, and any other parameter will be able to activate something else, which is very interesting. Now, on the Apex, they have the Trident and the Trident controlled dosing. The Trident controlled dosing, which I use, is very cool and very interesting and very easy to use. But of course, the Trident is by itself and will do calcium and magnesium and the alkalinity, whereas the GHL only will currently do its alkalinity. So we'll have to see as time goes on. But in terms of other internal integrations, there's really not much more that I can mention. But I did want to go over the Trident controlled dosing and the GHL's KH Director. And for that, I'm going to give Apex 5 stars and GHL 4 stars, only because the Apex does provide the magnesium and calcium Trident controlled dosing, whereas the GHL does not currently do that. It does the KH dosing only. So now we're going to go over third-party integrations. Third-party integrations would be a device that's not made by Neptune or GHL, such as a light, such as a pump. So both the GHL and Apex pretty much have the same amount of control of third-party integrations via the V1, or we call them the 0 to 10 volt outputs. The GHL, as I showed you, has 3, whereas the Apex has 2. So other than that, they do the same thing. They'll ramp any light that has 0 to 10, and they'll ramp any pump that has 0 to 10. So in that regards, they're basically the same in terms of third-party integration. They both have a module that provides control of Vortec pumps. The Apex does provide control of a Radion light, whereas the GHL does not. The bigger difference, of course, is the IOTA, which Apex has the IOTA control, and the GH does not have the IOTA control. overall, without splitting hairs, they're both going to get a 4-star rating. They both control a lot of third-party integrations, so I'm going to give them both 4 stars. I think they're both worthy of being able to control pretty much anything that we needed to outside of the controller. So now we're going to go over the tally of everything. We're going to go over all the reviews that I provided, and we're going to go over the final review. So here we go. So what I ended up doing is a little spreadsheet here, and there's 20 categories, and as you can see from the previous episode and this episode, we rated out of 5 stars. So 20 episodes at 5 stars has a total of 100 points. So I wanted this to be fair, so I did every category. I rated each category to give us a total. So we're going to first start with the GHL. So the GHL has 50 points out of 100. That makes perfect sense because I believe after testing it and going through all the different things I went through, it definitely has a lot of issues and also has a lot of great things. So an even score of 50 seems very accurate for that of the GHL. So if we go over to the Apex, it scored an 84, which I think is a very fair number. If you think about all the different things that it provides over the GHL, and it has a lot less cons to pros, I think the Apex overall is a much better system, and clearly our winner of the Apex versus GHL series. So after 15 episodes, after 3 months of doing this, I had a lot of fun doing them. I learned a lot about both systems, a lot of things I didn't know about Apex, a lot of things I didn't know about GHL. I found them both to be very good controllers for different people, for different situations, but overall the Apex won, which I kind of figured it would based on all of my testing and all of the things that I've done to make sure that both of them are equally given the best review I could possibly come up with. I did pay for both of the units in full. I got the best unit that GHL makes and the best unit that Apex or Neptune makes, and I found them to be both good pieces of equipment. So please, if you want to go ahead and look at all the videos and you haven't, they are in our description, all 15 of the episodes. And if you want to just quickly click on the playlist, they're right here. And I really appreciate you sticking with me, and hopefully you learned something about both of the systems in this series. Hopefully you are able to make a great and educated decision before purchasing either one of them. And I thank you so much for watching it. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort on my part, and I really appreciate you watching. Hopefully you liked this video. If you did, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I think you should go subscribe because there's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming up soon. So please stay tuned for those. And as usual, have a great day, and thank you for watching.